Hey. Okay, so with console release coming out, what I wanted to do is I wanted to make a list of basically tips to make you learning this game or as you go along this game um, a little bit smoother because there's a lot of information to learn, especially if you didn't play the first Darkest Dungeon. There is a lot to learn with this game. It's a fantastic game, but it is a little bit of sensory overload right off the top. So what I want to do basically is sort of kind of smooth down that road for you and say like, here are some things that I believe that new players miss, either because it's not explained at all or it's not explained very well, like in the tutorial. I play this game every day at twitch.tv/MarinerHawk. These are tips that kind of, as I was going through, a couple weeks or a month's worth of streaming, basically think of things that are important but kind of niche. I also pulled my Discord and pulled my Twitch chat and said like, hey, when you guys were new, what do you wish you would have known just because it would have made your life a little bit easier? So the full list ended up being 20. So I will give you 20 tips to make your life a little bit easier. The first one that I want to go with is use this wiki. Use this really as much as you feel like you need to. This game is not. DD1 was kind of bad about having to have the wiki up all the time. This one is not nearly as bad. Most of the information that you need is in the game itself. But it is nice sometimes to just look up enemies, look up regions, look up. You have all the heroes here. You have the academic studies is a perfect example. Um, you know what quirks you get out of if you go to this one, if you go to that one, etc. So this is very very useful. This is the wiki.gg one. Use the wiki.gg one. Do not use the fandom one. The fandom one is outdated, and fandom as a company is not good. So use this one. Use this one is constantly updated. It will continue to be updated. If you would like to hang out in my stream at any point, it's in the description. The wiki is in the description. My Discord is in the description. There's also a Darkest Dungeon Discord in general, which is also going to be in my description. So if you want any of those links, go there. If you have any more questions, you're welcome to ask me either in my stream or in the comments and what whatever information that you want. So the second tip is going to be a little bit of just sort of me giving tips without really explaining too much, without showing too much. This game is very difficult when you first start because you do not, if you've seen the Altar of Hope, you do not have the full Altar of Hope unlocked, obviously. You do not have all the combat items. You don't have all the in items, all the trinkets, etc. And obviously, that is just learning the enemies that are in this game as you unlock everything. There's a lot going on. Do not let the difficulty of this game in the beginning uh, break you down or make you feel bad, because everybody that plays this game will have some sort of some act or some enemy or something that they get stuck on for seemingly no reason. um the best advice that I can give as like a veteran player would be to learn one thing every run. Okay, even if your run dies, even if it's super sad, obviously you're going to get candles, you're going to unlock. So it's your next run is going to be a little bit better just because you have that combat item, you have that in item that might help you out a little bit. How did you die? Did you die because you didn't bring a stress healer? Did you die because you should have mastered a certain healing ability or a certain ability a little bit sooner? Have you just never seen this enemy before and that's what killed you? Is did your comp was your team comp just not well rounded enough? Did you not have enough backline damage? Did you not have enough debuffing to kind of stop them? Did you die to a boss that you fought for the first time? There are a million reasons why you will die obviously in this game, and every expedition, if you can at least learn one thing, then as you get 25, 50, 70 down the road, you will be a lot better and you'll have everything in the Altar of Hope unlocked. Another thing too is, another reason I would say not to feel bad is because you might have been saved down the road by a combat item that you don't even know exists yet because you haven't unlocked it. That is also on the wiki if you would like to look up all of the combat items. If you would, I'm not showing them here just because for people that want to avoid spoilers, but you can look into yourself. Do not get discouraged. As long as you are having fun, um, you are not going to beat the game, in your first try, in your 10th try, in your 25th try, right? Um, let the unlocks come as they come and just enjoy yourself and do not get too frustrated. It happens to everybody. It's happened to me. Okay, so for my next tip, I want to explain the difference between Act 1 and all of the other acts. So Act 1 is good because it's shorter. It's a bit of a not tutorial, but kind of like a more expanded tutorial. But it sometimes does kind of confuse people when they get into Act 2 and they don't realize the changes. So The first thing I want to explain for Act 1 is you only get these two regions right here to choose from. You have the Sprawl and the Tangle. As you get into Act 2 and on, there will also be the Fodor, or the Feeder, however you say it, the Shroud, and the Sluice. So how it works with Act 1 is in the first, when you get to the Valley Inn after you do the initial Valley fight, you will get to choose between the Sprawl and the Tangle. Let's say you do the Sprawl. You do the Sprawl and finish it. You will only get one option with the Tangle. As opposed to Act 2 on, you will get two options every single time. The Sluice is the only exception, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So, Act 1 is shorter. Act 1 is only 3 regions. It counts the valley as 1 region. So it's 3 regions in total, but it's only 2 selections. Like I said, you'll choose the Sprawl and you'll choose the Tangle, or you'll go the other way around, and then you'll head to the mountain. Now, from Act 2 on, it is 4 regions counting the valley. So that's technically 3 choices. So it would be the Sprawl, the Tangle, and the Fodor. And you would go to those 3, and then you would head to the mountain. Now, big difference. This is the main reason I said this tip. Big difference. You need a trophy to get into the mountain from Act 2 on. What a trophy is these 4 right here, the Sprawl, the Tangle, the Fodor, and the Shroud, all have a boss in them. And you'll see the node with the lair. With the lair, you go to, you fight the first battle of the lair. You can choose to continue to the second, or you can leave, and with the loot, you continue to the second, and when you continue to the third, it will be a boss. Again, I don't want to spoil the bosses too much, but you can look them up if you would like to, and just keep in mind from Act 2 on, you need a trophy. It will tell you that, but it's just one of those things that's still kind of easy to miss. Act 1, you do not need a trophy. You do not need to kill a boss. You can if you want. But from Act 2 on, every act from there on, you will need to have 1 trophy as you head into the mountain, or it will literally stop your game. Now, to talk about the Sluice. The Sluice is a free area. So you could go the Sprawl, the Tangle, and then the Sluice is an option. It'll be a third option in the inn. And you can go to the Sluice, and it does not count as a region. So you can go 1, 2, Sluice, Fodor. The Sluice is basically to get more relics and to get more trinkets. It's the pig area, kind of similar to the Warrens from the first game. You do not have it scouted. There will be no map as you head in there. There's no quirk that can give you a map. You will just be going in there. It is typically a shorter region. It is a free region that you can take if you would like. For my advice, I usually take it just because it's nice to have as many relics as possible for when inevitably you get to the act boss, or the lair boss if you haven't fought him, and to be able to be as set up as possible before you head into those kind of like more important fights. But this is a free region. Again, that's the main thing, is this is a free region. It has no boss. So this is different than these other 4, but the Sluice is still a good region to go to if you get a chance. You don't have to, but I usually do, just to make sure that you are as stacked as possible. Okay, so I want to show you some tips about driving in this game, and just driving in general. So, tip number 1, actually hit these piles. It's tempting to think that maybe you need to avoid them, and it is explained somewhere, but it's, as I mentioned before, it's a whole sensory overload thing of information. So drive into these. Sometimes it'll be nothing. Sometimes it'll be actually something, like you'll get either a combat item or you'll get some relics or baubles from it or whatever. It's just little things, but it does add up. Really, the main purpose is just to give you something to do as you're driving kind of like from one node to another. But some people think their instinct is to avoid them. Actually run into them. You'll get some stuff every once in a while. Next tip related to driving, which is related to the debris also. Go to controls, go to options controls, whichever one this is. It might be both, but manual steering sensitivity and max steering angle. Because, first of all, it feels, on the base game, it feels a little slow to actually like do some of that turning stuff. So turning this up will make your life a little bit easier, just to give you a little bit more control and to be able to hit the debris a little bit better. Because your first thing is like, man, these horses that are taking the stagecoach are a little bit small. They're not as strong as I thought. Turn up the sensitivity. It'll make a big difference and make the game feeling a little bit better. So, next, I want to explain the armor and the wheels up here. So, there are armor and the wheels. If you look straight ahead, right as I run over this right here, is you'll see these hazards, right? The purple gives you -1 armor, and the orange ones give you -1 wheel. So, one thing that I didn't know for a while is you want to keep these as maxed as possible. So what you have is this one right here with the wheels, and it says win 100%. Each hero gains plus 50% travel healing. I probably have more wheels and armor than you, but that's because it's the Altar of Hope down the road. But either way, it's It's win 100%. So if you have 2 wheels, when you have 2 wheels, you will get this plus 50% travel healing, which is really nice. But when you lose a wheel or lose armor, you'll lose that. So for the wheels, it's the travel heal, and for the armor, it's each hero starts combat with a guard over the block. Sorry, which can be really nice, at least to stop you from getting absolutely bursted as you get into a battle. So you'll see as I run over this wheel here. Obviously, you lose a wheel up here, but it no longer says that I get travel healing. So keep that in mind. I didn't know that for a while when I first started. Keep these maxed out as much as you can. So that's why, like, some of these assistance encounters in here, where you will get an option to fix your wheels or fix your armor or be able to do it at the end. It gives you a buff to stop you from having these repair fights, which is what happens when you, say, have no wheels and you run over one of the orange hazards right here, the rough patch. So how the repair fights work, it's in the tutorial, but how the repair fights work is basically if you are at 0 wheels and you run over one of these hazards, you have to do a battle basically where each turn, one of your heroes will get this repair token, and what that means is they lose their turn, and you have to fight essentially 3 against 4, or however many enemies there are. And at the very end, you get no loot, but you do get a wheel or you get an armor, depending on what it is, or depending on what you ran out of. The next thing I would like to show you is as you get later into, when you start running out of inventory space, as you get later kind of into some of the later regions, check your inventory every once in a while. Now, so what we're looking at is, these are baubles. These are baubles that you get from the valley. These are baubles that you get from the Shroud specifically, which is the region that I'm in. So each region has their own baubles, and they do not stack with each other. So check your inventory every once in a while to make sure that there isn't something like this. So if you're looking at this, I have 3 baubles taking up a spot compared to 40 up here. I have 2 baubles taking up a spot, and I have 6 relics. So if you are at a point, like I have 166 relics right here. If you are at a point where you're like, man, I don't know what's taking up all the inventory space. Like I have all this, I don't have, doesn't seem like I have a lot of combat items, doesn't seem to have a lot of in items, blah, blah, blah. All items, peek at this, because it might save you every once in a while, because this is not worth an inventory slot, especially if you have, like I said right here, 166 relics. Not going to kill you to get rid of 6 or to get rid of 3 of these baubles or whatever. You would much rather have the inventory space. So keep an eye on that every once in a while. It's not something you have to check all the time, but it is something that you want to check when you just feel like you're at full inventory space and are just desperately looking for more spaces. The same thing, you can go with candles. If you really don't feel like you want to hold on to this one candle, you can throw it away. So the next thing that I would like to explain is related to loathing. Loathing, if you don't know what it is as you're driving here, you'll collect this loathing and these oblivion tears that are randomly kind of like throughout the map. And how it works is when you max this out, the act boss gets plus 10% health, you lose 10 flame, and then a different effect happens to depending on what act you're on. So act 3, for example, all of your heroes will get a negative quirk. Now, the thing specifically that I would like to point out is it's not only like 0 to 4, and then when you max out, you get the negatives. You get the negatives every single time you get one of these. So for example, when you're at 1 loathing, it'll say plus 10% flame drain, plus 20% enemy advantage chance battle start. So through my little cheat menu here, I'm going to add another one. So you see it went from 10% flame drain to 25% flame drain, and then it went up to plus 25% enemy advantage chance also. So keep in mind that you not only want to not max out flame, but you want to make sure that you keep it as low as possible, because it's going to make your life more of a pain as it lowers your flame. And then obviously if you hit 4 and then you get the max health on the boss, or whatever the negative effect is that happens to be on your act, that can cause some problems too. So again, with loathing, keep in mind that road battles like these little barricades right here, they do not lower loathing. A resistance encounter does. So resistance encounters and cultist encounters, the nodes that are actual fights, will lower it by 1. If you look at like a Kyrgen's table right here, typically these mini bosses will lower it by 2. So that is worth knowing. But again, keep in mind up here, if it feels like your flame's going pretty quick, that's why. It's because you're probably stuck on loathing. So try to get that as much as you can. The point of loathing is basically so you don't, just do like a pacifist run and you're not fighting anything. It kind of punishes you not for fighting. You have to juggle whether you want to fight these to get your loathing down or fight and potentially die or potentially lose a hero. The last tip as far as driving goes is I want to show you guys how you can lock in quirks. So you can lock in quirks at this game, or get rid of them at the hospital. So getting rid of quirks, I'm sure you knew, but maybe you didn't. But locking in quirks is worth knowing also. So if I look at my heroes, and I'm like, wow, Erudite is plus 10% debuff resist. I really want Erudite. Sure, why not? So you go in here, click on the wellness tab, and then from here, you can pay 16 relics to get rid of either a positive or a negative quirk, or down here, you can pay 32 to lock it. So I'm going to go in here. Head in the Sand is bad when damaged. 15% chance of getting a blind token. I'm going to get rid of that. And then let's say I want to lock in Erudite. So I'm going to click on Erudite. Lock it in. You'll see this little lock next to it. You'll also see it in the hero sheet right here. This little lock into it. What this means is essentially how the quirks work in this game is you can only have up to 3. So that means if you get a fourth one, like an in, it'll randomly get rid of one of the quirks that they have. By locking it in, that will not happen. There are some in items, or there's one in item specifically called Wild Tea that gets rid of a negative quirk and has a 25% chance of getting rid of positive quirk. Death Tea or Wild Tea will not get rid of that. So locking in keeps this as long as this particular hero is alive. There's also a thing called memories. If you beat an act, you can put a memory on a hero, which will be a small buff, so let's say like plus 5% death blow resist. That keeps both the quirk, it keeps the positive and negative quirks, the diseases, and that locked in quirks. The locked in quirks last as long as this hero does. So there is nothing that will get rid of this. You can remove it if you would really like to down the road if you want to remove one and lock in another. But locking in quirks is a really good way. There are some quirks in this game, as you'll see, I'm sure, that are very, very, very good. And if you can lock them in, if you have the relics to lock them in and still survive and still comfortably go throughout the rest of the run, it is a really, really good idea for some of those quirks to be able to lock it in. And then obviously getting rid of some negative ones like Head in the Sand that can really, really cause some issues. So the hospital is very, very useful. It is the best way to get rid of quirks. It is the only way to lock in quirks also. All right, I would like to show you some stuff related to the inn. So if you have not lost a hero yet and you're like, what happens if I lose a hero? So what happens is you go to the next inn and you get to pick from any hero that you have in the Crossroads or a random hero. Keep in mind, when they come in, they are Wanderer. If you have paths unlocked, which you will have unlocked paths later, which is like specialized ways to kind of play the heroes to make them, you know, maybe a better tank or maybe a better ranged or whatever it is. They come in Wanderer, and they also come in with, as you notice, let's say I picked a Jester here. Immediately, they have 7 out of 20 relationships with everybody. So you do get punished a little bit for losing a hero, but you can continue the run. All you have to do is if you lose them in the middle of a, the middle of a region, all you have to do is just make it to the inn, and you'll be able to add another hero, and you can do that ad nauseum until you have all the heroes already used. Keep that in mind. They have the same Crossroads, or the same quirks that they had at the Crossroads. Same hero. You can also bring memoried heroes, which I mentioned. Memoried heroes are when you beat an act, you can give them a slight little buff, keep the characters, keep the quirks. So the next thing that I would like to explain is relationship chances. So how relationship chances are calculated is these are in tiers. So each individual pip to this does not matter specifically. It's not like right now it'll be like 5% chance for a negative relationship, and then if you get it up a pip, it goes to 4%, blah, blah, blah. They are in tiers. So if you look at Unfriendly, for example, Unfriendly is 33%. Even if I raise that to 8, it'll still be 33%. But once it gets to 9 and it switches to neutral, that's when the percentages start to change. So keep that in mind. If you have like a Whiskey, for example, which will raise an affinity by 1, if this is at 7, although it can crit and do a +2, you're probably better off using it somewhere else. Using it to some other relationship that has like an 8, for example, because once it gets to the 8 to the 9, it switches from unfriendly to neutral and makes a big difference right there. So keep that in mind. The individual pips do not matter. You can see it here, this little colored bar right above right here, so it tells you where the relationship pips start to change. But worst comes to worst, you can always look at the wiki. You'll probably have them memorized down the road. Specifically, the tip that I wanted to mention when it comes to relationship chance is how it's calculated. So look at this right here where it says positive relationship 25%. So it's a 5% base because they are at neutral. And then you'll see it says 10% pet and it says 10% pet dismiss. Now, what you need to remember is that so first of all, what I have is I have the Orphan Wolf Cub, which is the first pet that you unlock, plus 10% positive relationship chance. So if you'll notice, that actually is calculated twice. It's a little weird because you would think, at least I would think, plus 10% positive relationship chance. You would think it would be for the a pair. So it would be like Dismiss and Barristan both have a 10% chance of having a positive, or total have a 10% positive relationship, chance of having a positive relationship. But it's actually calculated individually. So every single person gets a buff, which means that's calculated twice. Dismiss gets a 10% buff, and Barristan gets a 10% buff, and obviously coming together, it's a 20%. So anytime you see a negative quirk that makes negative relationships more likely, that is only going to be calculated once because it's only on one hero. But something that buffs the whole party, sometimes you'll see ends. If it buffs the whole party, it's actually calculated twice. So keep that in mind. You can always hover over this whenever you need to look at it. But that's something that I thought was kind of weird early on. So you'll see, you know, there's a torch down the road that'll be like minus 33% positive relationship chance. What that actually means is because it's calculated twice, it's actually minus 66% positive relationship chance, which is a big difference from 30%. So the Orphan Wolf Cub actually is better than you think because it actually, technically, the chances of a relationship go up by 20%. So the next thing I would like to show you is basically how you bring the Bounty Hunter along. It's easy to miss. You might see it now. But how the Bounty Hunter works is you pay him 4 candles and he switches out with one of your heroes for one region. So there's some positives and negatives to this. The positives is that you get the Bounty Hunter, who is very strong. He kind of has the shackles of balance taken off of him because he is only with you for one region. So he doesn't have to be balanced the same way. So he's very good. He's good from all ranks. He can do basically everything except like heal. Other than that, I mean, he has debuffs. He can taunt. He can guard. He can stun. He can do a lot of damage from the front, do a lot of damage from the back. The Bounty Hunter is a lot of fun. It's very good. The negatives would just be that because he's going to be gone for a region, whoever you switch out is not going to be able to get positive quirks because they're not going to be there. But another positive is that they can't die. So one example that I like to use the Bounty Hunter other than just for fun is, let's say I look at this and just relationships are just awful. This is obviously the most extreme. But in a situation like this where it's very likely that I'm going to have negative relationships with the next region, if I have the Bounty Hunter back there, if I have the opportunity, sometimes you'll see this and sometimes it'll just be nothing back here, is I will just switch out this person, assuming that they're not like my healer, my only way of healing, you know, something like that. But if it's something like the Highwayman where he's just damage, Bounty Hunter does damage pretty good enough. So I would switch him out right now because of these just poor relationships. I don't feel like dealing with the negative relationships associated. So what you do is you will see it back here, this banner back here. It will not be at every inn, and I'm not sure if it's guaranteed for each like act or not. I don't know exactly how the numbers work with that, but occasionally you'll see it. So keep an eye out if you would like the Bounty Hunter. What he does is you can click it. You can click him. It'll tell you this right here. He'll accompany you for one region. His fee is 4. So click on Dismiss right here. He will always come with a trinket. Sometimes it's his hero trinket. Sometimes it's just a random trinket. You do get to keep this. And then from here, obviously, you have the skills and everything like that. He comes with quirks. He does not have any paths. He only has one path. And then he'll be with you for the region, and then come at the next inn. You'll just go back, and he will be gone, and it will be like the Highwayman back, for example. So you see now his banner is not there, obviously, since I hired him. So this will typically what it will look like in a normal inn in which you can't hire the Bounty Hunter, but then back here you'll see his glowing kind of like floating banner in the back. It used to not be super obvious when he was back here, so I missed it for the first probably 100 hours that I played this game. Luckily they changed that and I knew what to look for, but that's just a little heads up because like I said, there's a lot going on. If you're constantly clicking through menus and stuff like that, you will not see it in all likelihood. So one tip also is, let's say that I switch out the Highwayman, and then I realize, oh man, the Highwayman actually had a trinket that I really liked. Oh man, can I not use that trinket? How it works, go to the relationship page and click on his name, or pick his name, or however you do it, depending on if you're a controller or not. And you'll be able to take the trinkets or the combat items off of him, as if normally you're sitting here and there's no way to click him. So that's a good little tip too, is go to the relationships tab and then click on him, and you'll be able to take the trinkets off and then just put him back on when you get him in the next region. All right, so the last little list of tips that I'm going to tell you are related to combat in some sort of way. So the first thing I want to show you is how it works is every region that you choose, you will get a region goal and a region modifier. The modifier is is up here, and then the region goal is right here. So with the region modifiers, for the ones that can, it affects both sides. So plus 10% meltdown chance, the enemy obviously doesn't have stress, so the enemy's not going to have any meltdown. But let's look at Blood Moon. The Blood Moon right here, and I'll prove it to you when we get into a battle. Minus 20% bleed resist. So I did not know when I first started this game, admittedly, that this is from both sides. Because I assumed it was just for my team, but it actually is for both teams. So that you can use this to an advantage, where if you have a very bleed-centric comp, and you see something like this, minus 20% bleed resist, you can, it actually can be a bonus. You'll see the same thing with some other region modifiers, but that's one thing to keep in mind is the region modifiers actually do affect both sides. Okay, so I moved my cam up a little bit so you guys can see some things a little bit better. First thing I want to show you is proof that the region goals thing was correct. So if you click on a hero, you'll see all the calculations that go into any of the resistances. So you see it's 30% or 30 base, 30% bleed resist, and then minus 20 from the bleed condition. Now, if you hover over the enemies, you will see the same thing. So you'll see how they all have 0. That is because of the bleed condition. So to go alongside with the region goals, you can actually press Alt and hover over. It will zoom in on the enemies like this. So this is when you can, this is kind of like their hero page. So you go back to region goal, and you'll see 20% base bleed resist minus 20 from the region condition. Now, over here, it will also show whatever tokens that they have. It'll explain them. Whatever moves that you've seen, it will show that. So I'm on a different account right now, so I haven't seen their 2 of his moves, but I've at least seen one of the moves. So just to keep in mind, it's a little a way of seeing what they do, so you kind of like understand. It will show the ranks also. So if you look at like her, so she can only use Gruesome Reflection in the back ranks, but she can use it to hit all 4 of our heroes. So that is a good thing, especially as you are learning the game. You can press Alt, at least on the PC. I don't know what you press on controller, but there is a way to essentially zoom in on all of them and look at their abilities and see what they do. You'll see like this one, for example, it says what he does to himself, and it says what he does to the target. He guards one of his friends. But that is a very good thing to keep an eye on every once in a while, like I said, as you're kind of learning the game. So the next thing that I would like to explain is the intricacies of how speed works. So if you look at everybody's speed, the hero speed, Man-at-Arms has 2, Highwayman has 5, the Grave Robber has 7, because I have her Altar of Hope all the way upgraded, and she gets 2 from that. And the Plague Doctor has 4. And then if you look at the enemies, the Woodsman has 0, the Widow has 2, and the Urchin has 5. So how did the Grave Robber, who has the most speed out of everybody in this battle with 7, go? How is she not going first every single time? So first of all, I'll tell you how that works with Plague Doctor is on the round before she got a speed token, which means that she gets to go first in the next round no matter what. So, but the Altar, or the Urchin and the Highwayman both are going before her. So how that is. So my understanding of how it works is the game rolls a d6 and adds it to your speed value. So everybody gets a roll. Everybody that's in combat gets a roll 1 through 6. You don't get to see this. You just have to basically sort of guess based on how the turn order is. And that is their speed value for this particular turn. So let's say, for example, the Urchin got really lucky. The Urchin got a 6. So 6 plus 5, that gives him 11 for this particular turn. Let's say the Highwayman did pretty good, but he didn't get quite as good. So he rolled a 5. So his value for this turn is 10. So Urchin goes first because it's 11. Highwayman goes second because of 10. And let's say the Grave Robber got decently unlucky and she only got a 1. So her value is 8. So that's why the turn order is the way that it is. So it's a little RNG from turn to turn. Obviously, the better speed that you can get, and the more over the enemy specifically, the less likely that it will go in an order that you don't expect. But there is a little bit of RNG to be expected. And that's how it works is it takes your speed value and then adds some value, 1 through 6, a random value that everybody in the combat gets. And that's how it decides turn order. Next up, I'd like to explain how crits work in this game. So whether it be through a crit token like the Highwayman has, or a natural crit. So crits will do 3 things. Crits will do 50% the max damage. So what that means is if you look at Throne Dagger, the damage is 3 to 6. it will take that highest value, add 50%, and that's the damage that it'll do. Typically rounds up for what it's worth. You have a something like this. This will likely do, it would be 10.5 off a crit. This will likely do 11 for what that's worth. But Thrown Dagger, for example, on a crit would do 9 damage. So just 3 things. It does the max damage roll plus 50%. It on like a dot ability will extend the duration. Normally, if I used Poison Dart on an enemy, it would be 2 Blight over 3 turns. If you look at the Widow, who I just crit, 2 Blight over 5 turns. So it will also add 2 turn duration to whatever the dot is. So there are some, keep in mind, there are some trinkets that allow you to extend the duration by 2. So with that trinket, it would make it normally a 2 out of 5. And then if you crit off of that, it would make it a 2 over 7 turn. So dots are very, very good. The other thing that they do is they, as it mentioned in the token glossary right here, if you, I also have a video, you can just look up New Player's Guide under Mariner Hawk, and I have, I go down and break every single one of these tokens down and tell you some intricacies kind of with them. And Crit Token is obviously in that. So if you want to watch that video, feel free. It's linked in the description. I think it's useful. You at least, if nothing else, just to click through and see some certain tokens, like someone that you maybe don't understand. Kind of tells you when you might see them. But says the next skill is 9% crit and ignores 20% resistances. So 20% resistances, that means if I crit with Grave Robber, it will pierce 20% of her Blight resist. The Widow only has 20% Blight resist. So that means actually it will go through 0. So it's guaranteed to stick. That also counts with an ability like Blinding Gas. Blinding Gas, you see, it will give a blind. So if I crit with Blinding Gas, it pierces 20 of their debuff resist. So crits are, as you can imagine, very, very, very good. That whether that be natural or through tokens, they do a lot. And depending on the ability, you always get some sort of value out of it. And it is really nice, like with a dot, for example, to be able to do the math in your head and kind of poison dart this and know that it's going to stick because you know that it's going to crit. What I want to do next is explain the difference between rounds and turns. So if you notice this dot right here, what it says is 2 over 5 turns. So turns are each individual hero and enemy gets a turn. And then once all the turns are done, it will switch to the round. So if you see right here, these 3 still have turns. So they will go, and you see up here where it says round 2, once everybody has had their turn or turns, it will switch to round 3. So that is useful to know because there are some trinkets that will say round start. So now it's on a different round, and everybody gets their turn again. Some of them will say round start, and some of them will say turn start. And if you get confused, turn starts are each individual hero or enemy. There are some enemies that get multiple turns in a round, so keep that in mind. So that means something like a dot like this, it'll be 2 over 4 turns. That means however many moves that they have. Think of turns as moves. Okay, so the very last tip that I would like to give you, thank you for sticking with me through this whole thing, is dealing with what happens when you hit 10 stress. So as it might be explained from the tutorial, or you know from the first game, when you hit 10 stress, there's a chance to go Resolute or Meltdown. There's 2 different options. Basically, it's Resolute is the positive, Meltdown is the negative. So we'll show a real example right here. First of all, what she has is Horror. So Horror is a damage over time, but for stress. So on her turn, she's going to get 1 stress. Sometimes with Horror, by the way, it's a percentage. So like with the Grave Robbers Horror specifically, it's 75%. But for the Plague Doctors, it's 100%. So as we see on her turn, she's going to hit 10 stress, and she's either going to go Resolute or Meltdown. So the reason I want to show this is because I want to point out the percentages. The percentages are, it's an 80% chance to have a Meltdown on base and a 20% chance to Resolute. So as you'll see, she loses health, and she got a random negative quirk, which happened to be Pacifist. Resolute is the other way. Resolute will heal you and has a chance of giving you a positive quirk. So the main important thing is just the odds. It's an 80% and a 20%. There are some quirks that will either give you extra Resolute chance or extra Meltdown chance. My understanding, or my best guess, I suppose, is that Resolute chance has a floor of 5%. Meaning even if you have every negative quirk in the world that ruins your Meltdown chance, there's still, I believe it is 5% for them to still have a Meltdown. So that's good. As far as resolute chance, you can't have 100 resolute chance in this game, even in the most niche of circumstances. But you can up that. Like there will be a quirk that gives you plus 15% resolute chance. So what that means is a 35% chance to resolute and a 65% chance to have a meltdown. So keep an eye on those. Keep an eye on the quirks, but just to know that the base is 80% meltdown, 20% resolute with everybody but the flagellant. The flagellant is will go toxic 100% of the time. So either way, I hope these tips helped you out at least a little bit. If they did, please let me know, just because it's nice to know that my work helped somebody. But again, I stream every day at twitch.tv/MarinaHawk. If you guys would like to stop by and just say, hi, I liked your video, or say, hey, you have other questions, and say, hey, I don't know if I didn't really understand how you explain this. Can you explain it to me? Or obviously you can post in the comments and I'll be able to respond there. But either way, I appreciate you guys for watching. There are plenty of more tips that I can give in this game, but I tried to at least narrow it down to 20 that are either pretty useful, either not in the tutorial at all, or just sort of added on. So I appreciate you guys very much. I hope you have a nice rest of your day, and I hope you stop by my stream sometime, because I think it's fun. Have a nice rest of your day.